There for Care is brought to you by CareScout with the goal of sharing real-life conversations about aging care. Views expressed on this program are the speaker's own. We do not provide medical, legal, tax, financial, or other professional advice. Always talk to your own professional advisors for advice tailored to your needs. Hi, and welcome to the There for Care podcast, a podcast about all things aging, whether you're navigating the journey for yourself or a loved one. I'm Amy Rein, and today we are joined by Lynn White. Lynn's worn a lot of different hats over her lifetime. Currently, she serves as the CEO of CareScout Insurance, but she's also playing the role of a caregiver, and that's what we are here to talk about today. So welcome, Lynn.
Thank you very much, and both very intense jobs, by the way.
Yes. You had a sort of unique experience in childhood that put you in early contact with the experience of aging. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that to start us off?
So, Amy, I certainly did. In fact, starting at about age 4, that's the earliest I could remember. But my father is a clergyman. And during those days, he often would visit people who were in hospitals or who lived at home, who were kind of shut in, as we normally call them. And I would accompany him, my little hand in his big hand. We'd walk into a house. And often, because I was a kid, I would bring a little bit of the kid wonder and joy into the home where someone was receiving care. And even from that very early age, you could tell people that were simply receiving care, the difference between those who were receiving care and those who were really cared for. Sometimes we would go into a house and somebody, the care recipient was isolated to a room, and we were out in a living room enjoying all kinds of interesting treats and punch and the like, yet the care recipient was off and isolated. And then there were times when everybody was around and lifting up the person who was needing care, and you could just tell that difference. So I started to understand that then. But most impactfully was when we would go to nursing homes. And I think my earliest recollection was about age 6. I remember a certain room that I went into. I remember the lady that we visited. I remembered the sights, the sounds, the smells, and it just made me understand the importance of ensuring that people feel valued as they age, because that was not the sense I got from those earliest experiences. Sometimes so, you could see that the person was the center of the care, but oftentimes not. And that really did influence how I think about care today and how I think about dealing with the aging population.
Yeah. So, having a father that's a clergyman and, being part of those sort of last phases of life and the like, what are some of those characteristics about aging that might make it feel like it's worse than the actual death?
So I did fear aging more than I feared death, for sure, as a result of some of those experiences. And I think it boils down to a couple of things. One is the sense of being devalued, like I talked about before, isolated, forgotten, bored, and that you lose your independence and the thought of being reliant on someone else. And most particularly, that your preferences won't be honored. I remember seeing people, workers, very carefully and kindly bringing in trays of food, and the food did not look great. Yeah. And I was like, I am never going to eat that. I don't ever want to eat that. And when I was younger, I had this thing with tuna fish. I did not like tuna fish. And I remember I went to visit a woman that was in a nursing home, and they came in and there was a scoop of tuna fish on the plate. And I went, ah! Yeah. So I thought about just the fact that your preferences can't be honored. And all of those things can really devalue individuals. And I think it's so important that we think about the preferences that people have and try to honor them as they age.
Yeah. Yeah. So, as you talked about with your father, it was often you sort of going and visiting these little vignettes of aging. But then later in your life, you had an experience where sort of aging came to you in your own house. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
It was definitely 3D, and it did come to us very unexpectedly. My mother, when she was very young, when she was in high school, went to work for a woman outside of the state. They remained in contact as my mother grew older, but didn't see each other often. And my mother was in the vicinity of her home state, went to visit her, found her situation to be exceptionally precarious, that she needed a lot of support, and there was no one there to help her. So while my mother was there, she made arrangements for the woman to move into an assisted living facility, but found that that was not going to work because there was no support there. On my mother's way home from that short visit, and she was planning to go back to kind of get her acclimated into the new facility, the lady called our house having our number, and this was before cell phones were popular, and my father answered, and she said so many things that let us understand she wasn't lucid, and this was probably not going to be the best situation for her. So when my mother got home, my father told her about that conversation, and they made the decision to go to the other state, which was many states away, and drive this woman back to Virginia where she would live with us. Oh, wow. Now, my father had never met her, was my understanding. So when they went up to pick her up, my mother drove a car, my father rented a U-Haul, and the first time he met the lady was when he was packing her up to move her into his home. Oh. I was 16 at the time, and I remember that that this was all just new and sudden, and we weren't expecting it. And my brother, who had gone off to college, we kind of repurposed his room very quickly to enable her to come and live with us. And there we cared for her for many years until her death. And she had no one else. There were very few contacts to check on her, and my parents actually restructured their entire lives, in addition to a little bit of my own, to ensure that she had the appropriate care. So it was an amazing experience. First, just that act of kindness and openness to someone that, my father didn't even know. And then the way she was cared for taught me so much. It enabled her to maintain her dignity and to be safe and comfortable. And there were difficult moments. There were times when she was combative. There were times when it was inconvenient, but we did it, and we did it well. And that experience really resonates with me every day when I come into the office. It's about honoring humanity and ensuring that people are cared for with dignity.
Yeah. Can you, I think there's a lot of analogs there with a lot of other people's caregiving experience, that sort of suddenness that you're just sort of plodding along in life and all of a sudden everything changes. Can you talk a little bit about what those experiences and learnings were for you and your family that inform the passion that you have today?
So, Amy, I got to tell you, first of all, it happened so quickly that I realized when you're in a state of triage, you are trying to survive, not just thrive. So you can't make the optimal decisions. Like, I don't think that the room that we had for her was the best place, given some of the needs that she had, but that was the space that we had. So we had to eventually configure that to honor her needs. But the other thing that I really came to understand is what I would call the intergenerational ecosystem, because I was something at 16 for her that she needed, and she was something for me that I needed. So I was kind of the joy in the day for her. I had a few caregiving responsibilities, but they were very light because my parents did not impose that burden on me. But I was kind of her joy, her entertainment, her confidant. And she was lucid for the most part, but there were periods where she was not as coherent. But during those periods when she was coherent, there was wisdom, and that wisdom kind of was imparted to me, and I recognized that. So really being able to plan, understanding that there are highs and lows, but there are joys, and there are situations that will occur that will make a lasting impression, an indelible impression on your life. That's what happened to me during those years that she was in our home.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about making a plan for you and your loved ones. So how did those experiences with visiting people with your father, with having this woman age in your home, how does that make you think differently about what you want for your own aging journey?
So I want to have my preferences honored. So I want to have some say, control the narrative a little bit. And I want to age in a way, I hope, that will enable me to stay healthy as long as I can. So I'm thinking about that now. I'm also thinking about the things that thrill me and wanting to ensure that I leave breadcrumbs for people who will be caring for me so they'll know what those things are. And I also want to make sure that we have access to resources to help me, just like people that I'm using to help my parents now. Mm-hmm. So just kind of laying the breadcrumbs so that the way that I'm cared for kind of honors what it is that I want to be at that stage in that life and how I want to be treated in that stage in life. And it's important because resources are difficult to find. Oftentimes, we don't know what we need. We don't know who's going to provide it. And just thinking through that a bit earlier. Now, I won't know exactly what my needs are. I just want to be able to align with resources that would enable me to have those needs addressed. And you can do that. It's just a plan. Mm-hmm. It's the power of planning and seizing your own power to do that. So I got to do that now. I can't wait, because I can't wait until I'm in that triage position where it's going to be about surviving and not thriving, right? I want to thrive. So I want to plan for that now.
So you talked about leaving breadcrumbs for your family. How are you thinking about sharing those plans and those desires for your own aging journey? Like how do you stay ahead of that triage moment so that when you arrive there, it doesn't have that sense of crisis or as much of a sense of crisis?
That is such an interesting thing because I determined that I needed to control this narrative and start the discussions now. So I'm talking with my daughters. I am talking with my niece and nephew. I'm talking with my husband about, look, here's what I'm going to, don't bring me tuna fish that comes out of a ice cream scooper. I'm going to throw that right back at you. I'm a big tea drinker. And I said, don't bring me a tea in a styrofoam cup. It's got to be in a pretty teacup or a mug so that I can enjoy that. And I'm just talking about those things that thrill me so that when it comes time for my care and hopefully I'm cognizant enough to realize these things are happening, that I can find some joy in it. I want people to understand that there are ways to identify resources. You know, from the job I'm in now, I know that there's some places that you can go to get information, know what those things are. And then the thing I haven't done yet that I'm planning to do is really make sure that some of this is memorialized in writing so that people won't be confused in the end and they won't go, now, what is it that she told me? I'm going to have it down there in writing so that they can understand it. I think it's important, too, to understand that care is not cheap. So you have to make some plan in order to accommodate the expenses. You certainly do. And I'm thinking about that as well, so that I won't leave a burden for those behind me.
Thank you for sharing that. Clearly, aging is very complex. There's a lot of things to think about, to plan for, a lot of people to bring along in the process. You know, if you think about no matter where people are in their planning journey, in their aging journey, they may or may not be in a place where they can take care of all of these steps based on where they're starting. But if they just do one thing, what's the one thing?
One thing. I think it boils down to this. Seize your power. Think about it when it comes to aging and care. Think about it. Plan for it, and then you can be comfortable with it. It's kind of you set it and forget it. I don't want to think about getting old and having needs and dependencies, but if I plan for it now, I don't have to think about it. And that's the most compelling point that I can leave with individuals. Seize your power.
I love that.
Then, you know, you age in the manner that honors your humanity. You have some say over it. Set it and forget it.
I love it. Thank you for joining us
this
today.
Has been a pleasure.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for joining us on the There for Care podcast. Share it with your friends that are navigating the aging journey and be sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.